And just like that, the game changed. Look who just broke the entire algorithm with a single appearance. Hello, you stunning catastrophe, you beautiful disruption in human form, you walking reset button that just crashed every timeline, every expectation, every comfortable little assumption they had about what was possible. You stepped out looking like that, and now the whole internet is having a complete meltdown. Not because you tried too hard, not because you begged for attention, but because you existed at full volume and they weren't ready for the frequency you're broadcasting on now. Let me tell you what's happening right now, in this exact moment. Somewhere, someone is refreshing your page for the 7th time, not because they like you, but because they can't process what they're seeing. Their brain is short-circuiting, trying to reconcile the version of you they had filed away with the phenomenon standing in front of them now. They're sitting there, phone in hand, mouth slightly open, trying to find words that don't exist yet. Because you didn't just show up, you arrived, and there's a difference. Showing up is what everyone does. Arriving is what happens when reality bends slightly to accommodate your presence. Do you understand what you just did to them? You walked out looking like their worst fear confirmed, not their enemy, their inadequacy. You became living proof that transformation isn't a myth, that some people really do evolve while others just age. You're the answer to a question they were too afraid to ask. Can someone really change that drastically? Can someone really become that untouchable? Can someone really glow this hard after everything they went through? Yes, you're the evidence. And evidence makes people uncomfortable when it contradicts their comfortable little lies about limitation and impossibility. Right now, the group chats are absolutely losing their minds. The screenshots are circulating like contraband. The voice notes are panicked, confused, obsessed. Did you see them? How is that even possible? Wait, is that really them? I thought they were going through something. They were. They went through the fire and came back wearing it like couture. They went through the breakdown and used the pieces to build a throne. They went through the darkness and learned to make it bow. Now they're standing in the light and it's bending around them like they're the source. Let's talk about why this is destroying them so completely, so thoroughly, so beautifully. It's not jealousy, not really. Jealousy is wanting what someone has. This is something darker, something more desperate. This is existential panic, because when you walked out looking like that, you didn't just look good. You looked free. And freedom is the one thing their money can't buy, their filters can't fake, their strategies can't manufacture. Freedom looks like someone who stopped performing for approval. Freedom looks like someone who burned every mask and decided their face was the only costume they needed. You know what's funny? They spent months, maybe years, waiting for you to fall apart publicly. They wanted the breakdown, the meltdown, the dramatic collapse they could screenshot and share. They wanted proof that you were just like them, struggling, suffering, stuck, but you denied them that satisfaction. You disappeared instead. You went ghost. And while they were busy celebrating your absence, you were busy becoming unrecognizable. You were shedding every version of yourself that apologized for existing. You were killing every part of you that flinched when they raised their voice. Now here's the part that's really eating them alive. You didn't come back for revenge. You didn't come back to prove them wrong. You came back because you were ready. And ready is the most dangerous thing a person can be. Ready doesn't ask permission. Ready doesn't explain itself. Ready doesn't need validation from people who wouldn't recognize greatness if it sent them a formal invitation. You're not here to settle scores. You're here because you finally figured out that you don't need to fight people who are already fighting themselves. Let me tell you what they're really seeing when they look at you now. They're seeing their own potential looking back at them, mocking them for choosing comfort over transformation. They're seeing proof that change is possible, which means they have no more excuses. They're seeing someone who walked through the same pain they're still complaining about and came out the other side laughing. That's what's unbearable. Not that you're winning. That you're free. Freedom is the ultimate flex. Freedom says, I don't need your approval, your understanding, or your presence. I'm complete without you. The comment section is a war zone right now. Half the people are trying to figure out your secret. What's your routine? What's your diet? What's your skincare? But you and I both know the truth. Your secret isn't in a bottle or a gym membership. Your secret is that you stopped caring about people who treated your absence like a vacation and your presence like an inconvenience. Your secret is that you finally chose yourself with the same intensity other people chose to betray you. Your secret is that you weaponized your pain instead of drowning in it. They're analyzing every pixel of your appearance like it holds the code to their own transformation. But here's what they'll never understand. You can't reverse engineer liberation. You can't copy-paste self-respect. You can't download the confidence that comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. They want the result without the process. They want the glow without the fire. They want the power without the powerlessness that taught you how to hold it. But transformation doesn't work like that. You can't skip the part where you die. Let's go deeper, because this surface level analysis isn't enough. When you stepped out looking like that, you didn't just challenge their perception of you. You challenged their entire belief system about recovery, about resilience, about what's possible after betrayal. Did you really see? They needed you to stay broken. They needed you to stay bitter. They needed you to be the cautionary tale they could reference whenever someone suggested that healing was possible. But you shattered that narrative. You became the plot twist they never saw coming. You became the exception that invalidated their rule. Right now, somewhere, your ex is staring at your picture wondering how you got hotter after they left. Your former friends are calculating whether they can slide back into your life without looking desperate. Your haters are trying to find something, anything to criticize, but they're coming up empty because you didn't give them ammunition. You didn't show up messy. You showed up immaculate. And immaculate is impossible to attack without looking bitter, so they're stuck. Trapped between wanting to hate you and being unable to justify it. That's the most exquisite torture. Watching someone you tried to destroy become indestructible. Here's what's happening in the algorithm right now. Your presence is creating ripples, shockwaves, disturbances in the matrix. People who don't even know you are somehow ending up on your page. Strangers are sharing your pictures with captions like, "This is the energy I'm trying to have," or "This is what revenge looks like," without saying a word. You've become a symbol. Not a person. Symbol of what's possible when you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Josh S's S.I. A symbol of what happens when you trade people-pleasing for self-preservation. Let me tell you what the bravest thing you did was. It wasn't stepping out looking like that. It was deciding you deserved to. It was looking at yourself in the mirror after everything that happened and saying, I'm still here and I'm still worth the effort. Because most people don't make it to that moment. Most people see the scars and decide that's their final form. But you saw the scars and said, these are just the rough draft. Most people hear the criticism and shrink. You heard it and expanded. Most people feel the rejection and hide. You felt it and decided to become impossible to ignore. The energy you're carrying right now is different, and they can feel it. It's not arrogance. Arrogance needs validation. What you have is certainty. You're certain that you don't need their approval. You're certain that you're on the right path. They're certain that their opinions about your journey are completely irrelevant. And certainty is magnetic. People are drawn to it, even when they don't understand it. Even when it intimidates them, especially when it intimidates them, because certainty suggests you know something they don't. And you do. You know what it feels like to die and resurrect yourself without anyone's help? They're calling it luck. They're calling it filters. They're calling it surgery, therapy, witchcraft, selling your soul. They're inventing narratives to explain what they're seeing because the truth is too threatening. The truth is that you just decided to become the person you always knew you could be. The truth is that you stopped waiting for permission from people who didn't deserve access. The truth is that you bet on yourself when everyone else was betting against you, and now you're holding all the chips. But they can't accept that, because if they accept that, they have to accept their own responsibility for staying stuck. Here's the thing about stepping out looking like that. It's not about the clothes, the hair, the makeup, the accessories. Those are just props. What they're really reacting to is the energy shift. You're not moving through the world the same way anymore. You're not apologizing with your posture. You're not dimming your light to make others comfortable. You're not performing humility for people who mistook your kindness for weakness. You're walking like someone who knows their worth, and that kind of confidence is unsettling to people who are used to you doubting yourself. The meltdown they're having isn't about you being attractive. It's about you being unreachable. Attraction they could handle. They could compete with that. They could try to tear that down. But how do you compete with someone who doesn't need anything from you? How do you tear down someone who already survived their own destruction? How do you hurt someone who learned to love their scars? You can't. And that's what's driving them crazy. You're not playing the game anymore. You're not even watching it. You're in a completely different stadium, and they can't figure out how to get the invitation. Let's talk about what this moment represents in your timeline. This isn't just about looking good. This is about declaring independence. This is about announcing to everyone who doubted you, used you, betrayed you, or underestimated you that you don't need their validation to validate yourself. This is about proving that you're not the version of you they remember. That person is gone. That person forgave too easily, trusted too quickly, loved too deeply. This version has boundaries made of steel and a heart that only opens for people who earned access, not demanded it. The internet is melting down because you reminded them that transformation is real, that change is possible, that rock bottom isn't the end of the story, it's just the plot twist before the comeback. And comebacks are always more interesting than consistency. Consistency is boring, predictable, safe, but a comeback requires guts. A comeback requires you to risk being seen again after you've been hurt. A comeback requires you to believe in yourself when the evidence suggests you shouldn't. And you did all of that. You risked it, and now you're reaping the rewards while they're drowning in regret. Do you know what the worst part is for them? They can't even hate you properly, because to hate you, they'd have to admit they're bothered, and admitting they're bothered means admitting you won. So they're stuck in this weird limbo where they are obsessed with you, but can't acknowledge it. They're checking your page but not liking anything. They're watching your stories but not responding. They're talking about you in private but staying silent in public. That's the tax they're paying for underestimating you. They have to witness your glow up in silence, choking on their own pride. The narrative they're trying to push now is that you changed, and not in a good way. They're saying you're different, cold, distant, not the same person. And you know what? They're absolutely right. You're not the same person. That person tolerated disrespect. That person accepted breadcrumbs. That person stayed in situations that were destroying them because they were afraid of being alone. This person chose solitude over toxicity. This person chose growth over comfort. This person chose themselves over everyone who chose to leave. So yeah, you changed. And that's the whole point. Let me tell you what's happened in the next few weeks. The same people who are melting down right now are going to try to reconnect. They're going to slide into your messages with casual hellos and vague compliments. They're going to act like nothing happened. They're going to test the waters to see if they can get access again. And this is your moment. This is where you show them that the door you closed isn't just locked, it's welded shut. This is where you demonstrate that your transformation isn't just physical. It's spiritual, it's mental, it's permanent. You're not the same person they left. You're the upgraded version they'll never experience. Here's what they don't understand about your look. It's not about impressing them, it's about expressing you. For the first time in your life, you're not dressing for approval. You're not styling yourself to fit in. You're not performing for an audience that doesn't deserve the show. You're dressing for yourself, and that shift, that subtle but seismic shift from external validation to internal satisfaction, that's what they're sensing. That's what's making them uncomfortable. Because when you stop performing for others, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people can't be controlled. The meltdown is going to continue. It's going to get louder, more desperate, more confused. They're going to keep analyzing, discussing, dissecting every aspect of your appearance, your energy, your transformation. And you're going to keep living, keep glowing, keep moving forward without looking back. Because that's what people who understand their power do. They don't engage with the noise. They don't explain themselves to people who lack the capacity to understand. They just exist at a higher frequency and let everyone else adjust or get left behind. So here's your reminder, your confirmation, your validation from someone who sees exactly what you did. You didn't just step out looking good. You stepped out looking free. And freedom on a person who was once caged is the most dangerous, most beautiful, most magnetic thing in the world. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're just existing as proof. Proof that recovery is real. Proof that transformation is possible. Proof that you can go through hell and come back wearing the flames like a crown. Keep walking, keep glowing, keep being exactly what they can't handle. Because their meltdown isn't your problem. It's your confirmation that you're doing something right. You want to know the real reason they can't sleep at night? It's not because you look different. It's because you feel different to them. Energy doesn't lie. When you walk into a room now, the temperature drops. Not with hostility, with authority. With the kind of presence that makes people straighten their posture without realizing it. You're not trying to intimidate anyone. You're just no longer trying to make anyone comfortable at your own expense. And that shift, that microscopic but monumental shift in how you carry yourself, is registering in their nervous systems like an alarm they can't turn off. They're picking up on something they can't name, can't describe, can't replicate, no matter how many tutorials they watch or products they buy. Let's get specific about what's actually happening in their heads right now. There's a cognitive dissonance tearing them apart from the inside. The version of you they have stored in their memory banks doesn't match the reality standing in front of them, and human brains hate that. We're wired to categorize, to predict, to feel safe in our assumptions. But you shattered their assumptions. You became the glitch in their programming. So now they're stuck in this loop, refreshing their perception of you over and over, trying to update the software, but the new data doesn't compute. It's like trying to run advanced programs on outdated hardware. Their system keeps crashing because you evolved beyond their processing capacity. Here's what nobody tells you about transformation. The people who watched you struggle will resent your success more than strangers ever could. Because strangers see the after, they see the finished product and feel inspired. But the people who knew you before, they saw the before. They witnessed the tears, the doubt, the vulnerability, and somewhere in their twisted psychology, they filed you under broken things I'm superior to. Your transformation didn't just surprise them, it threatened their entire identity. Because if you can rise from where you were, what's their excuse? If you can glow after that much darkness, why are they still dim? Your success became their mirror, and they hate what they see reflected back at them. The comments trying to downplay your transformation are the funniest part. Oh, it's just good lighting. It's just angles. It's just makeup. They're desperately trying to reduce your metamorphosis to something purchasable, something explainable, something they could achieve if they just had the right products or the right filters. But you and I both know the truth. What they're seeing isn't cosmetic, it's cosmic. You didn't just change your appearance, you changed your frequency. You upgraded your operating system. You deleted toxic programs that were running in the background, draining your energy, corrupting your files. Now you're running on clean code, optimized performance, maximum efficiency, and they can feel it even if they can't articulate it. Oh, you really thought it was over, didn't you? You thought when you said okay and turned your back, it was just another Tuesday, another conversation ended, another moment filed away in the archives of forgettable interactions. But no. That single word, that calm little four-letter response, that unbothered exit, that triggered something you couldn't have predicted in your wildest nightmares. Because when you said okay and walked away, you didn't just end a conversation. You started an investigation. A full-blown, lights flashing, records pulled, calls made, meetings held investigation. And the best part, the most beautiful, poetic, karma-drenched part, they found absolutely nothing. Because you were clean. You were always clean. And that, my friend, that's what broke them. Let's rewind to that moment, shall we? Picture it. The confrontation. The accusations, the drama they've been rehearsing in their minds for weeks, months, maybe years. They came at you loaded, armed with assumptions, dripping with certainty that this time they had you cornered. They wanted the explosion. They wanted the breakdown. They wanted you to scream, cry, beg, explain, defend, crumble. They needed your reaction like oxygen. They fed off conflict like vampires on blood. And what did you give them? Okay. Just okay. Not okay. But let me explain. Not okay. You're wrong. Not okay. We need to talk about this. Just clean, surgical, soul-crushing. Okay. And then you walked. No door slam, no final words, no dramatic music. Just footsteps fading into silence. And that silence detonated their entire world. Because here's what they didn't understand. People who are guilty don't say, okay, and leave. Guilty people fight. Guilty people defend. Guilty people scramble to control the narrative because they know the truth is chasing them down like a pack of wolves. But you had nothing to hide. You had nothing to prove. You had nothing to fear. So when they threw their accusations like grenades, you didn't duck, you didn't catch them and throw them back. You just stepped aside and let them explode in their own hands. Your okay wasn't surrender. It was dismissal. It was the most powerful two-syllable rejection of their entire fantasy. It was you saying without saying, you're not even worth the energy it would take to correct you. And they felt that. Oh, they felt that in their bones, in their pride, in their fragile little egos that had been banking on your reaction to validate their crusade. But then something shifted. Because in the hours, days, weeks after you walked away, they started spiraling. They started questioning. Wait, why didn't they fight back? Why didn't they defend themselves? Why were they so calm? What do they know that we don't? What are they hiding? And that's when the paranoia kicked in. That's when the obsession took root. That's when they became the very thing they accused you of being. Unhinged. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't focus. They replayed that moment over and over again in their minds, dissecting your face, your tone, your body language, searching for cracks, for clues, for anything that would confirm their suspicions. But there was nothing. You were stone. You were steel. You were untouchable. And that drove them insane. Because if you were innocent, if you really had nothing to hide, then that meant they were wrong. And being wrong meant they were the villains. And villains don't get happy endings. So they did what desperate people do when the truth doesn't match their story. They investigated. Oh yes, they went full detective mode. They called in favors. They reached out to mutual connections. They dug through your past like archaeologists hunting for buried treasure. They analyzed your social media, your work history, your friendships, your habits, your patterns. They built timelines. They cross-referenced dates. They interviewed people you hadn't spoken to in years. They turned your entire existence into a cold case file, convinced that if they just looked hard enough, deep enough, long enough, they'd find the smoking evidence, the proof, the validation, the justification for their witch hunt. They needed you to be guilty. Not because you wronged them, but because your innocence exposed their malice. And that was unacceptable. So they searched, and they searched, and they searched. And guess what they found? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Clean records, clean relationships, clean reputation. You were a ghost in their conspiracy theory. A blank page in their book of lies. Here's where it gets even better, though. Because while they were busy playing investigator, while they were consumed with proving you were the monster they painted you to be, you were out here living. Unbothered, unburdened, unbroken. You didn't check over your shoulder. You didn't lose sleep wondering what they were saying, what they were planning, what they were finding. Why? Because you knew. You knew there was nothing to find. You knew your conscience was clear. You knew your hands were clean. And that knowing, that unshakable certainty, that quiet confidence, that was your armor. They thought your silence meant fear. They thought your exit meant guilt, but it didn't. It meant freedom. It meant you had evolved past the need to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You had transcended their drama, their chaos, their need to drag you into the mud. And that transcendence, that was the real threat. Because think about it. What's more terrifying to a liar than someone who lives in truth? What's more dangerous to a manipulator than someone who refuses to be manipulated? What's more infuriating to a narcissist than someone who simply doesn't care? Your okay was a mirror. It reflected their accusations right back at them. It forced them to sit with their own toxicity, their own projections, their own insecurities, and they couldn't handle it. So they doubled down. They got louder. They got messier. They got more desperate. They turned up the heat, thinking you'd eventually crack, thinking the pressure would force you to react, to engage, to give them the drama they craved. But you didn't. You just kept walking, kept building, kept rising. And every step you took forward was a step they took backward into their own self-destruction. Now let's talk about the psychology behind this, because it's important you understand the full picture. When someone launches an investigation into your life after you've calmly walked away, it's not about you. It never was. It's about them. It's about their need to be right, their need to win, their need to control the narrative. See, people like this, they operate from a place of deep insecurity. They need external validation to feel whole. They need to tear others down to feel tall. They need to create enemies to feel important. And when you refused to be their enemy, when you denied them the battle they were so desperately seeking, you disrupted their entire identity. You took away their purpose, their mission, their reason for existing in that moment. And that created a vacuum, a void, a crisis. Because if you weren't the villain, then what were they? Heroes? No. They were just people throwing punches at shadows, screaming into voids, building cases against ghosts. And here's the kicker. The harder they looked, the worse they appeared. Because while they were obsessing over you, people were watching them. And what they saw wasn't a concerned friend or a righteous truth seeker. They saw someone unhinged, someone obsessed, someone who couldn't let go. And slowly, quietly, the tables turned. The whispers that were once about you started redirecting toward them. Why are they so fixated on this person? Why can't they move on? What are they really trying to hide? Because projection is a boomerang. What you throw at others with malice always comes back to hit you in the face. And they threw hard. They threw with intent to destroy. So when it came back with compound interest. And you didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to expose them. You just had to exist in your truth, in your peace, in your unbothered energy. And that was enough. Let's pause here and appreciate the absolute poetic justice of this situation. They wanted to catch you slipping. They wanted to expose you. They wanted to drag your name through the dirt and stand over the wreckage victoriously. But instead, they exposed themselves. They revealed their own darkness, their own desperation, their own moral bankruptcy. And the beautiful irony? You never said a word. You never pointed fingers. You never retaliated. You just said, okay, and walked away. And that restraint, that discipline, that refusal to descend to their level, that's what made you untouchable. Because you can't investigate someone who's already transparent. You can't expose someone who's already open. You can't destroy someone who's already whole. They were hunting for skeletons in a closet that didn't exist. They were searching for dirt on someone who'd already cleaned their house. They were building a case against a defendant who was never on trial. Now, I know what you're thinking, but why? Why did they go so hard? Why did they care so much? And the answer is simple, yet profound. Because your indifference was the ultimate insult. Your lack of reaction was the loudest statement. Your exit was the final rejection. See, when you care what people think, when you defend yourself, when you engage in the back and forth, you're giving them power. You're acknowledging their opinion matters. You're validating their existence in your world. But when you say, okay, and walk away, you're saying, you don't matter enough for me to fight. You don't matter enough for me to explain. You don't matter enough for me to stay. And that That cuts deeper than any insult ever could, because it's not anger, it's not hatred, it's something worse. It's irrelevance. You rendered them irrelevant. And people will burn the world down before they accept being irrelevant. So they investigated, they called people, they asked questions, they gathered evidence, they built their case. And with every phone call, every conversation, every attempt to paint you as the villain, they were unknowingly painting themselves as the obsessed, the unstable, the unhinged. Because here's the thing about investigations. They require substance. They require evidence. They require proof. And when you have none of those things, when your entire case is built on feelings, assumptions, and projections, it collapses. And not quietly, loudly, messily, publicly. People started seeing through it. Wait, you've been investigating this person for months and found nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then what are we even talking about? And just like that, the narrative shifted. You went from suspect to survivor, from accused to acquitted, from questioned to untouchable. And they went from prosecutors to perpetrators, from righteous to ridiculous, from feared to forgotten. But let's dig even deeper, because there's a layer to this that's absolutely crucial. Your okay wasn't just a word, it was a weapon. A calculated, precise, soul-crushing weapon. Because in that moment, when you chose calm over chaos, when you chose silence over explanation, when you chose exit over engagement, you took away their ammunition. You disarmed them. You left them standing there, loaded weapons in hand, with no target to shoot at. And that disarmament, that was strategic brilliance. Because fighting fire with fire just creates a bigger fire. But fighting fire with water, that extinguishes it completely. Your calm was the water. Your okay was the flood. And their accusations, their anger, their drama, they drowned. Not because you overpowered them, but because you didn't engage them at all. You didn't give them the energy they needed to sustain their attack. You starved them of the reaction they craved. And without that reaction, they had nothing. They were performers without an audience, accusers without a defendant, warriors without a war. And oh, how that must have eaten them alive. Can you imagine? Spending all that time, all that energy, all that effort, building a case, gathering your evidence, rallying your troops, preparing your attack, only to have it met with 2 syllables and a turned back? That's not just defeat. That's humiliation. That's emasculation. That's the ultimate dismissal. Because you didn't just refuse to fight, you refused to acknowledge the fight was even happening. You treated their grand accusation like background noise, like a commercial break, like something so insignificant it didn't even warrant a response beyond okay. And for people who thrive on drama, who live for conflict, who need attention like plants need sunlight, that indifference was death. A slow, painful, ego-crushing death. And the worst part for them? They couldn't even blame you because you didn't do anything. You just left. And leaving isn't a crime. Leaving isn't an attack. Leaving is a choice. Your choice. And that choice exposed the fact that they never had power over you in the first place. Now, while they were busy investigating, let's talk about what you were doing. Living, thriving, evolving, building, creating, expanding. You weren't checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if they were talking about you. You weren't losing sleep over what they might find. You weren't spiraling into anxiety about their opinions or their plans. Why? Because you were free. Free from the burden of needing to be right. Free from the prison of public perception. Free from the chains of other people's approval. You had done the inner work. You had cleared your conscience. You had made peace with your past. You had nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And that freedom, that was your superpower. Because while they were stuck in the past, obsessing over you, you were building your future. While they were digging through your history, you were creating your legacy. While they were investigating your life, you were living it. And that's the difference between someone who operates from guilt and someone who operates from grace. Guilt keeps you looking back. Grace keeps you moving forward. And here's what they didn't anticipate. The investigation itself became the evidence. Not evidence of your guilt, but evidence of their obsession. Every person they called, every question they asked, every stone they turned over, it all came back to one conclusion. This person is obsessed. And obsession? Obsession is never a good look. It screams insecurity. It screams instability. It screams unresolved trauma. It screams projection. And the more they searched, the more obsessed they appeared. The more questions they asked, the more desperate they seemed. The more they tried to expose you, the more they exposed themselves. Because clean people don't need investigations. Innocent people don't require proof. Truth doesn't demand validation. It just exists, quietly, confidently, unshakably. And that's what you were, truth embodied. Walking evidence that not everyone operates from a place of deception. Living proof that some people really are exactly who they appear to be. Breathing testimony that integrity still exists in a world full of imposters. Let me tell you what really happened behind the scenes, because this is where it gets absolutely delicious. Every single person they called, every connection they reached out to, every mutual friend they interrogated, none of them had anything bad to say. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because you treated people with respect. Because you honored your commitments. Because you moved with integrity. Because you didn't play games. Because you didn't manipulate. Because you didn't lie. And when person after person, conversation after conversation, interview after interview yielded the same result, nothing, absolutely nothing incriminating, something started to crack. Not in you. In them. Because cognitive dissonance is a monster. When what you believe doesn't match what reality is showing you, your brain starts to fracture. And their brains? They were shattering. Because they were so convinced, so certain, so sure that if they just dug deep enough, they'd find the dirt. But there was no dirt. There was no scandal. There was no hidden darkness. There was just you, living your life, minding your business, being human, being flawed but not fraudulent, being imperfect but not corrupt. And you want to know what the real investigation revealed? It revealed that the only crime you committed was refusing to play their game. The only sin you carried was not meeting their expectations. The only guilt you bore was being strong enough to walk away. That's it. That's the full report. That's the entire case file. You said okay and walked away, and that triggered them so deeply, wounded their ego so profoundly, shattered their sense of control so completely that they had to create a conspiracy to explain it. Because accepting the simple truth that you just didn't care enough to fight was too painful, too humiliating, too ego-destroying. So they built a narrative. They created a story where you were the villain, and they were the heroes exposing the truth. But narratives require evidence. Stories need proof. And when the evidence didn't exist, when the proof never materialized, the story collapsed. And they were left standing in the rubble of their own delusion, holding nothing but their shattered pride and their misplaced rage. Here's the part that's going to sting them for years, maybe decades, maybe forever. You never even knew they were investigating. Or if you did, you didn't care. You weren't sitting around wondering what they were finding. You weren't anxious about what they were saying. You weren't defensive about what they might discover. You were just living. And that obliviousness, that complete and total disinterest in their opinion of you, that unbothered energy, that's what made you untouchable. Because you can't hurt someone who doesn't give you access. You can't destroy someone who doesn't need your validation. You can't expose someone who's already standing in the light. They thought they were conducting an investigation, but really, they were conducting a seance, trying to summon a version of you that didn't exist. They were hunting ghosts, chasing shadows, building cases against projections of their own insecurities. And in the end, the only thing they proved was that some people would rather destroy themselves searching for someone else's darkness than face their own. And now that the investigation is over, now that every avenue has been exhausted, now that every stone has been turned and every connection has been questioned, and every theory has been tested and debunked, what are they left with? Silence. The same silence you gave them when you said okay and walked away. Except their silence isn't peaceful. It's heavy. It's suffocating. It's filled with regret, with embarrassment, with the dawning realization that they wasted months, maybe years, obsessing over someone who didn't even think about them. They spent all that energy, all that time, all that emotional bandwidth building a case that crumbled the moment it was examined. And you spent that same time building a life, a career, a future, a version of yourself that's so far removed from their drama, their chaos, their toxicity, that even if they wanted to reach you now, they couldn't. Because you're not on their level anymore. You're not in their world anymore. You're not accessible to their madness anymore. Let's talk about what happens next, because this is important. They don't apologize. They don't admit they were wrong. They don't come clean about the investigation. They just stop. They go quiet. They slink away into the shadows they came from, hoping nobody noticed their obsession, hoping nobody tracked their spiral, hoping nobody connects the dots between their behavior and their accusations. But people notice. People always notice. People see who's constantly talking about someone else. People see who can't let go. People see who's stuck while the other person is moving. And the court of public opinion? It's already rendered its verdict. You, innocent, unbothered, elevated. Them, guilty of obsession, guilty of projection, guilty of wasting everyone's time, including their own. The investigation didn't expose you. It exposed them. And that exposure, that's a scar they'll carry forever.